Hey, everybody. Hey, hey, hey. Felicia here. Thank you so much for your support on this wonderful, wonderful Tuesday. And thanks so much for tuning in again to another edition of Positive Tea with Fee. I am doing absolutely wonderful. Um, we had a storm a couple days ago and then some rain yesterday, but you know how they say after the storm there's sunshine? Well, we still got a few droplets today, but the sun did shine and it's a little bit hotter. And so summer is right around the corner. So I am happy about that. So I'm so glad everyone's here tonight. Let's jump right in. Success After Purpose is the title of the show tonight. It is the title that I chose because I felt like I was, in mode of sharing some of my experiences. So, Success After Purpose is basically a topic that kind of goes to the heart of some of the things that I feel like are my reasons why, and it's always important to know your whys. And I also feel like it allows things to make more sense when you start talking about your journey and your process. So the first part of that success after purpose that I want to hit a point on is understanding the beauty of choices. Life is full of choices. Life is full of twists, turns, directions. And I'm going to say that when you get a handle on that, you're able to take the pie of life and make it in bite sized areas that are important to you. And that's what we call our values. Sociology was my minor, and a lot of the things that we learned had to do with the choices that you make and what they're based on. And this is something as small as whether or not you want to drink coffee in the morning or use an alarm, or whether or not you automatically get up all the time because you're a morning person. There's so many things that we have deep seated inside us that come from our basic values. And we do these things just as easily as we breathe sometimes because it's so deep seated in us. And so I realized at a very young age, I am mainly a morning person. And a lot of my values are centered around structure. They're centered around doing things at certain times, being there at certain places, to do certain things. And that's kind of something that started at a young age. So, in making the choices in my life, a lot of that had to do with being in my hometown, kind of seeing my dad's process. My dad, I know a lot of you guys know that I am a major, major daddy's girl. And I have a lot of his personality traits, a lot of his mannerisms, and just a lot of things that come from a perspective of dad. And so a lot of those things that I do, like getting up early in the morning, being a workaholic, a lot of those values came from the fact that I was so close to my dad. And so at a point in my life, I started making a lot of choices that were based on his approval. But as I got older, I was making some choices that were kind of the opposite of that. So, what I went from in my very emotionally turbulent adolescent period is trying to be a lot like him to trying to be completely opposite of how he was as I got older. And as I got older, the value system became a lot more balanced because I started to pick up a lot more of the significant things in my life that circled around those choices. And I got to the point where I started to enjoy doing more. I started to enjoy doing a lot more things based on what made me feel good and what was effective in the strategy to taking all of the larger dreams and the larger goals and making them smaller dreams and smaller goals. Now it took a lot of time for me to get there. This was not something I did overnight, but in making those choices, you got to understand what's most important to you. And then once you understand what's most important to you, you got to eat the meat and spit out the bones in any situation, okay, that you see value in. Okay, because we have circumstances, we have people, we have places, we have materials, we have literature, we have websites, or just our own everyday lives that teach us what's good, what's bad, and what we need to take. And so the more you learn about you, the better you are at keeping your personal perspective in making those choices. And once I make decisions, one of the things that is a lot like the way that, dad did things and still does to a certain degree in his older age, is making a decision and sticking with it. And that is kind of something that can work for you or against you, depending on what path you're going to go on. And as we get more into success after purpose, you're going to understand that I came to a point where I made the choice of understanding what was most important. And what was most important became a lot more important, centered around purpose, not just being the best or being successful or being first or having the most in this area, but centered around purpose. And that's something that I came to later in life. And I've never looked back. And so the next thing that we're going to go to after you're understanding the beauty of choices for this woman, for Felicia, it was living on a prayer. A lot of you know that I'm an evangelist, pastor in training. I have a ministry, Positive Outcomes Ministries. I'm very active in the church. I was raised biblically, raised with prayer, but I was able to form my own relationship with God and get in touch with my own spirituality. So once that started, I started to form a better relationship with God. And that happened before I started to walk in my calling. And before I became the Felicia that I am today, in wanting to see as many people around me give their lives to Christ and understand the meaning of salvation, I first had to form my own relationship. And in the midst of all of the sifting through the choices and the making decisions and deciding what was most important, I decided that my main priority needed to be my relationship with God. And that was living on a prayer for a while, because within the means of sifting through who I was and what choices needed to be where and what priorities needed to exist and why, one, two, three, four, five, and all of that, sifting through whether I wanted to do this or wanted to do that, was worthy to be a mother, was equipped enough to be a businesswoman, et cetera, et cetera. All of those things that make me who I am today, I started with prayer. And I'm not saying that I didn't pray. I've always been a prayer, but it's a difference in having a routine prayer and just kind of saying, thank you for this food, or, things that are a little bit routine, which there's nothing wrong. You need all that. Okay. I'm not saying that it's wrong to pray over a meal. We need to thank God for providing nourishment for the body. And there's things that we pray for that do become, a bit routine, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about having an intimate, close knit relationship with the Heavenly Father. I'm talking about being able to confess your sins, being able to commit yourself to God, being able to make a priority, knowing that whatever purpose He gave you is most important in your life. And everything else has to be secondary. Before you can be successful in education, be successful as a parent, be successful at your secular job, just be successful as a human being, you need to make sure that you are giving most of yourself, the most vulnerable part of yourself, the best part of yourself to God. And during that time of living on a prayer, it was not easy, because keep in mind, when I was understanding the beauty of choices, I wasn't making the best choices during that time, because I did that before I formed a better relationship with God. Before I performed that self determination and the self development to understand that spirituality had to be in place, along with a good mental health, good physical health, good emotional health, spiritual health had to be on that list. And it it was it was something that allowed me to see myself in a certain way that I hadn't before. So it's kind of like when you're forming that relationship with God, you're stripped of everything else. And that's kind of what happened with me. A lot of folks have said before who are backslidden, meaning that they, originally got salvation and might have dedicated their lives to God, but because of different circumstances in life, they got off track. They say they have to hit rock bottom. I'm not going to say that I was at rock bottom, but I'm going to say that there's been times where I was at very low places in life where I had to get my spiritual balance again. And the reason that I'm thankful for those moments is because I was able to live through it. Everyone doesn't, but I was able to live through those hard times. And I always came out on the other side a better person. So there were times where it was just me and God. There were no friends that I wanted to rely on. There was no family I wanted to rely on. And I'm not saying that those people were not available, but as we spoke before, one of my issues and weaknesses has been isolation. And so, in the midst of that isolation, which I will say there's a difference between isolation and self care. Okay, those are not the same things. There is no balance with isolation. I want to point that out. Is there were conversations I had with God I felt like I couldn't have with anyone else, not even a therapist, not even a pastor, because I wasn't there yet. And so, in living on a prayer, I had to see myself for exactly who I was. No predetermined, objective, nothing. Just bare Felicia right there, bearing my soul to God in prayer. And this allowed me to get to a place where I was able to make changes and confront things that allowed me to be weak where I needed to be humble as a servant of God, but also strong enough to be able to proceed on and go into a different area of myself where I'd never been before. And that's the Felicia that you see today that's doing what she can to live in the purpose that He made for her, because I know that He created me for a reason. The next thing is learning to release guilt. So, success after purpose, you're going to have a lot of things come about. Once you get that trained conscience, once you get to a point where you are aware of yourself, your choices, understanding where you're going, you have that relationship with your Heavenly Father. You're living on a prayer, you're understanding, what's most important. A lot of the things that you did before you made that commitment, it's going to come back to haunt you. And the thing is, guilt is complex, okay? And it's something that's going to happen over and over again when you think of things that you did, things that you failed at, or negative feelings that come up because of things that go on around you. At the wrong place at the wrong time. I had a situation where I was, with someone, and we were into some things that we shouldn't have been, and she was not, one of the ones that was able to recover from that. And so even after years seeing this person, this group of people, and knowing that you participated in a situation where everyone did not recover. We have times in life where what we do when we're off track does not just affect us, it affects other people. And having that trained conscience and understanding, I went through a period of remorse that kind of caused me to have an underlying sense of guilt that was unbalanced. Okay, it was unhealthy guilt, because some guilt is good. You have a trained conscience. When things happen, you're going to feel that, but it got to a point where it was unhealthy, so I had to get myself back on track. And dealing with guilt, you have to, in order to release it, you have to first understand the emotion itself. Okay, and I knew the emotion. So that's one thing that I was always strong in, is knowing, Felicia, you're feeling guilty about this, and then I knew where it was coming from. I knew it was coming from the fact that I was in a place where I was having this sense of carelessness. Okay. I'm not going to say that we were intentionally doing anything to hurt anyone or having, a spiteful state of mind, but we just simply were being careless. And in apologizing to yourself, confessing to God, and making amends, you have to learn from that experience. And so I went from feeling guilty to learning from the experience and trying to encourage others to do that, including the other individuals who were involved. And I didn't really understand the effects of certain things until years later. And, guilt is a process just like any other emotion. But I was able to replace all that negative self talk with self compassion. And where the self compassion comes in is it's a stage in your guilt where you understand you messed up, you made a mistake, you were at a different place in your life, but you don't want to become toxic to yourself. You want to keep the negative self talk to a minimum because number one, whatever it was that happened, happened. You can't take it back. You can't go back and undo it. We don't have a time capsule where you can go back to that moment and make everything right in that moment. So, what's done is done. And as you get older, you start to realize that you can trust yourself again. And remember the guilt. So I'm not saying just forget it. You want to keep a fresh perspective on those negative feelings that come from a negative situation that you contributed to because you don't want to get into a pattern of going back there. So there's a certain amount of guilt that we need to be able to work through whatever those negative feelings were. And then when you're able to do that, you're able to be a little bit kinder to yourself, but at the same time to release it, you have to forgive yourself. And that wasn't the easiest thing for me because I went through an area of time where I felt so guilty that not forgiving myself became a distraction from my purpose. So you don't want to get to the point where you're regretting and fact checking every single thing you do to a point where it's unbalanced. You want to be able to trust yourself enough to know you've learned your lesson, and then if you need a reminder, that's fine. That's natural, that's understanding, but you want to forgive yourself for your past self, okay? And then you want to notice when you're being self-critical, okay? Because there's a difference between being objective and having a balance versus being self-critical. So you just want to make sure you're doing what you need to do to accept your mistakes and move on. And also another thing that I needed to understand is God forgave me. Okay. So in enhancing my spirituality, I had to understand that if God can forgive me, I can forgive myself. And that's just one of the things that we're going to have to continue to tell ourselves, and it's not always easy, but it's necessary. And the last thing that I want to talk about when it comes to success after purpose is commitment to contentment. Now, let's talk about contentment, okay? Being content in life has so many benefits, okay? And you have to be committed to being content. And the definition of contentment is feeling satisfied. That's with your situation, with where you've come from, the past, how you are dealing, with the choices you've made in life, how you're, progressing and, maintaining a good, healthy spiritual relationship with God, and just where you are and releasing guilt from those times in your life where you were at a place that you didn't want to be. The way you have to be committed takes a little bit more than satisfaction. It means that you're not going to compare yourself to other people, okay? Because there are certain people in life that might be in an area where you do admire them, but you don't want to envy them and you don't want to compare, okay? Because everybody has their own walk in life. And I tell people all the time, there's enough success to go around, okay? And when you decide to measure your success simply by fulfilling the purpose that God gave you, then you're going to be a lot less concerned with where other people are in their lives. Okay. If it's not directly affecting you, you can wish them well, you can admire them, you can even be inspired by them. But there is no room for envy and unhealthy comparison because it causes you to be unproductive. And then the next thing that helps you in being content, like we've talked about before, is being humble. You know, I realized long ago that I was not the most important thing. Okay. In prioritizing, knowing that my purpose was more important than me. Okay. And let me break that down. We are all worthy as human beings. None of us are better than the next one. But if we are just existing and not fulfilling our purpose, that's going to put you lower on the totem pole. And the reason why is we want to be productive members of society. And the way we do that, the way we make ourselves productive, is by finding our purpose and doing what we can to fulfill that purpose. Everyone has a different purpose, okay? But by being productive in your purpose, that's going to make success fall after, immediately after. And success is different things to different people, okay? But knowing how to measure your success makes all the difference and it keeps you humble. The next thing is you're going to have to be self disciplined. Okay. You're going to have to know when enough is enough. You're going to have to understand how to get your peace of mind. Okay. And that peace of mind comes from contentment because once you recognize where it is, that's going to help you with your growth and your self improvement. It's going to help you with your happiness. You'll be able to make a determination between what you want versus what you need, and then you're able to be simplistic, and that allows you to stay away from greed and any type of toxic feeling of going after things that are just simply not necessary for your purpose. That doesn't mean you don't have the right to enjoy life and be satisfied, have possession status, and be where you want to be in life. It just simply means that the essence of being content is just understanding what you have, realistically speaking. Be happy with that. Okay. Be a person that is satisfied with your life or situation if you're doing what you need to be doing in your purpose. It's okay to strive for success. It's okay to strive to be the best that you can be. It's okay to continue, developing yourself to the next level. I'm all about self-development. I'm all about self-improvement, but there has to be a point where you have to make it possible to be content with basic needs and desires. And I found that contentment is not only peace of mind, contentment is a virtue because it means that you're living the good life because you're living in your purpose. The good life doesn't necessarily have to mean you have all the money. The good life doesn't necessarily have to mean you have, all of these titles or all of this status. The good life simply means that you're living in the purpose, and the good life means that you're doing what you can to have your life filled with forgiveness, mercy, modesty, humility, self-regulation, and self-development, and love. And commitment to being content is going to give you a value that you've never seen before because it allows you to appreciate what you have and appreciate where you are. And you have to appreciate what you have now and where you are in life right now to be able to appreciate the beauty of choices, the beauty of living on a prayer and having that wonderful relationship with God, releasing guilt and not allowing yourself to live in toxicity of things that you might have done that you regret, or things that you shouldn't have done that have stalled you or procrastinated your purpose. You're able to be committed to being content, and it's just a breath of fresh air. And me personally, whenever the feeling of contentment in any given situation, because I do wear many hats. So there's very varying areas of my life where I feel like the commitment to contentment has been better than the rat race of things. When I was younger, I feel like there were certain things that were a bit unrealistic versus realistic, like we've talked about before. And as I got older, I realized that self development had less to do with things you can see and more to do with the type of person you are and how important it was to make a difference in the world. And I became content with helping others, with making a difference in someone's life who might be dealing with an area that they just can't quite combat or deal with concerning their mental or spiritual health, and how important it is to value your family, the family that you grew up with, the family that you're building, the family you belong to, um, and friends, just being content. And it's just given me a peace that I I just can't say that I would have been able to get 10 or 15 years ago. So it's just really blessed me. So I want to thank you guys so much, as always, for continuing to support me and tuning in tonight. It does mean the world to me that I do have individuals who tune into the show, some watch on replay, and some who reach out and private message me. It means a lot to understand that you're making a difference in someone else's life. So I want to thank you guys for showing up again and helping me to fulfill my purpose, because the success for me is to continue to build on my purpose, fulfill the purpose, and to make a difference that matters. And you guys help me do that night after night, and also every Tuesday, of course, for the show. And so, thank you so much for your continued support, especially those of you who know me in other aspects and allow me to be a part of your life and tell my story, because we're on this journey together to fulfill our purpose. So thank you. So I will see you guys next Tuesday and have a wonderful rest of your week. Bye bye.